Greetings, everybody. It's Armor of Truth Live number 401. Many still assume that our schools are neutral or benevolent realms, right, where the best interests of our children are the top priority. But as we and our guest today, Lynne Taylor, also known as the Common Core Diva, have found and have been eagerly trumpeting from atop the city walls, the evidence is clear. It is not hidden. Our education systems are infested with, at best, a soft ideological social theory. And at worst, which would be my opinion, I think is more accurate, a subversive, long-embedded system of spiritual formation with the jargon of academics and the social sciences masking what is, in essence, a state-sponsored religion. One which sees your child not as a human being made in God's image, but as a programmable unit, a cog in a workforce pipeline. Proverbs 22:6 gives us this timeless truth. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. And that works the other way too. Whoever is discipling the children, most of the children, is going to control the culture. And so our children today spend about 14,000 hours in a public education setting. And so, as Vodi Bakum says, we shouldn't be too surprised when they come home acting like Romans, if we allow the Romans to train them up. So the command belongs to parents under God, not the state, not the technocrats, and certainly not a subversively embedded ideological social engineering project. As our guest, Lynne Taylor, shows that under COVID-era bills like the American Rescue Plan, over $165 billion was poured into education, not to foster reading, critical thinking, or virtue, but to install tracking mechanisms, forming behavior, digital conformity platforms, and social and emotional learning programming, all of it bypassing parental authority and Christian values. So these programs are not supplemental. This isn't just part of the plan. They are foundational to the system's goals, creating compliant, behavior-managed global citizens, not free thinkers or moral agents. And so as Christians and defenders of liberty, we must understand this is not a debate about better technology or modern teaching tools. This is a war over worldview. Social and emotional learning, Common Core. The modern education system is not neutral. It teaches children to reinterpret their emotions and identities and even their moral duties through the lens of collectivism, emotional relativism, and of course global citizenship, often far from parental consent. So from living rooms to lecture halls, local school boards, to national airwaves. Our guest today, Lynne Taylor, known widely as the Common Core Diva, has been a tireless and fearless voice in this fight against the federal overreach and globalist influence in American education. A former private educator who officially retired in 2015, if we have it right. Lynne has dedicated the past 2 decades to exposing the hidden networks, deceptive policies, and unconstitutional shifts that have redefined American education under the banners of Common Core, career and technical education, social emotional learning, of course, the STEM, STEAM, and STREAM programs, all rooted in globalist frameworks. Since 2002, Lynne has been a featured speaker at events, both large and small, traveling the country and appearing on nationwide radio and multimedia platforms from the U.S. to Mexico, the U.K. She's getting around there. That's good to hear. All to sound the alarm, primarily to equip parents, educators, and concerned citizens with the truth. Her research is meticulous. You can find her at commoncorediva.com. Her writing is unapologetic, and her passion is contagious. That is a fact. And she's authored exposés for outlets such as Prevent Common Core, the Patriot Institute, Practical Homeschooling Magazine. And her insights are regularly featured on the American Policy Center, local newspapers around our area. We're all in North Carolina here. And her flagship platform, once again, Common Core Diva. This is where she blogs and publishes full-time, bringing readers weekly updates, which you need to be reading, especially if you're a parent. Even if you're not a parent, you need to know this stuff. Getting weekly updates and resources that cut through the bureaucratic language and reveal the real-world impact of policy on families and children. So in recognition of her courage and clarity, Lynne received the 2011 Distinguished Educator Award from the National Society of High School Scholars and the 2016 Torchbearer Award from the L&B Network for her advocacy in education. So congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Peers and policy analysts alike recognize Lynne as a trusted expert on topics, once again, career pathways, workforce training models, United Nations influenced education schemes, data mining, and the redefinition of education away from training children up in the way they should go in that traditional sense, and toward compliance and collectivist goals. She's not just a writer, she is a real live warrior for truth. And again, follow her work at commoncorediva.com, Facebook at Common Core Diva. Is that Common Core Diva 2023 on Facebook?
That's it, Brad. Yeah, the original page got taken down because I probably said too much that
you might have
that might have ticked somebody off. So
you might have just told the truth. Yeah.
I might have. So, but yeah, that's Common Core Diva 2023 is the Facebook page. Yeah.
At Twitter, it's Common Core Diva, and you can find her on Roku under the Breaking News Journal with her own Common Core Diva channel. So we welcome today Lynne Taylor. Thank you for being with us. What's on your mind today that you think is most important that we need to get to today?
Well, Brad and Summer, thank you so much for the gracious introduction. Thank you for being able to speak with not only you, but your audience, because, you know, as we continue to see our parents go, wait a minute, what is going on? We know that conversations like this will be part of what helps solve an issue, not keeps it going. And what's on my mind today is the fact that we have an entire couple of generations out there who are parents who are thinking that somehow the educratic, as I call it, system. And what do I mean by educratic? It's run by those who think they know education. Either they've had education experience and they've sold out to the status quo, or they've never had education experience, but they've got the money and they think they can gain the control. That's what I mean by educratic. But we have a couple of generations out there who are believing the mainstream hype that somehow this educratic system fails our children, when in fact it is actually succeeding in the underlying goal. And what is that underlying goal? It is not to impart your child with basics of reading, writing, arithmetic. It is absolutely not about critical thinking at the right stage in a child's life, which is not anywhere before teenage years. And we can get into that if you want to, how that's been turned on its head. But what it's been turned into is and I hate to use this word in relation to people because people don't belong in a pipeline. Sewage belongs in a pipeline, and that is certainly not where our children belong. But I have seen illustrations here in the state of North Carolina, especially the STEM programs, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And we can get into how that's part of the problem as well. But the children are described as talent supply for a workforce-based pipeline. And I'm sitting here, if there could be any more affront to God Almighty and the gift of human life in the form of your family and your children, I don't know what is. But when I hear these phrases that are somehow brought up by these global entities like the Organization for Cooperation of Economic Development, No, it's OECD. Sorry, it's Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development.
Right.
There we go.
OECD.
Anyway, they came up with the phrase human capital. And as you were saying in the introduction, we're now shifting away from recognizing that our children are human, as in living, breathing, God-fearing,
Yeah.
and thus need to have their mind filled with what is supposed to be called knowledge, or what we sometimes say is education. But they're being turned into, just as are any age who's in school, whether it's college, community college, whether it's, I'm going back to work, all the kids are grown and I'm going back to school to get another degree, or I'm coming out of prison and I'm, getting reacclimated in life and I'm going to go to school. What we're seeing happen is it doesn't matter what age you are, what educational institution you're in, you are worth more as a blockchain commodity to be bought and sold and traded and tracked than you are as a living, breathing person.
Mm-hmm.
And that pretty much in a nutshell is where my mind is today. So how that fits in with where you guys want the conversation to go, I don't know, but we have got so many avenues that we could go down.
Well, I'm really most interested in what you have to say. I think this might be an interesting way for us to start something out. I've got a little, hopefully this is the right video. Let's see if this works here. A little, do you remember, Yuval Noah Harari wrote a children's book recently, and it was all about training kids up in the way they should go.
Okay.
And let's just listen to a little bit of this, and then this doesn't have. Yeah, and then I'll play the little piece from Vodi, and I think that might give us a foundation.
Sure.
Before I continue, I want to make sure you can hear that audio because I had some trouble earlier. Did you hear that?
No.
No, you didn't. Interesting. Well, let's.
Don't you just love technology sometimes?
I do, and well, we had a little lightning strike over here over the weekend. And I came in to find that out, on Monday or Tuesday morning, and so I've been having to reset everything.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's because I'm playing it. Yeah, I don't know. It's not that big of a deal, but it really is just. Yuval Noah Harari is saying here that he's saying. He says he wants to help kids understand the world. He wants to help them understand who they are. And then over here in another setting, he says humans are hackable animals. So apparently that's who he wants to help kids understand what they are, who they are,
right.
What their place is in the world. And then we have these really excellent words from Vodi Bakum, right from the Bible. People is not above his teacher, but everyone after he's been fully trained will be like his teacher. And that is truthful and scary, and also good news if you're depending on the kind of teacher that you have. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. And Vodi goes on here to talk about the public education system and how much time children are in it.
Oh, it's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much
it
time,
is. Mm-hmm.
how they're trained, and particularly how the state seems to believe that it has authority over your children. This idea of in loco parentis,
Right. Yeah.
That was sort of imposed in the education system. That while they're with us, they're ours. Or maybe they just believe that. What do you know about that, first of all? How does the state, as far as if we're going out beyond your scope, let me know. But are you aware of this, how the state views the child?
Yeah. It is. It's the state is there. I mean, the children are theirs. And if you look at, and it doesn't matter whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, what I have noticed in my research, local, state, federal, global, is that when you have someone who is supposed to be an elected official and you hear them start a speech with something like, this is the state of blah, blah, and we are here to let you know that our citizens, especially our children, well, now hold on just a second. When the state officials starts using like this is the state of blah blah, and these are our people, and these are our children, did the state come into your home and have your baby for you? I mean, last I knew that wasn't happening. Maybe it has, and I just don't know it. It might be that rock I live under sometimes that people tell me I do. But what I'm pointing out, kind of rather sarcastically, is that the state or any official of the state has no business using the words our people, our children. They are not the state's children. They are your children. So it should be the state of blah, blah recognizes that parents residing in our state and their children, that's how it, but that's not how it's worded. And why? Because they want to claim the ownership, so to speak. So I want you to stop and think. We have a constitutional amendment that banned indentured servitude. Yet we have unknowingly allowed this to resurrect itself through our education system. I mean, if you think about it, that's why the language goes the way it's going. Our children, our schools. No, they're the taxpayers' schools and the family's children. You cannot lay ownership or claim ownership of that. You can't claim it of a person, but yet we are seeing programs that are created through the educational system, especially tied to funding, that will turn your child into somewhat of an indentured servant or your family because you're taking the money connected to those IEP funds, which are the individual education programs for special needs, or you're using the Medicaid funding for speech or hearing impairment programs, or you're using the supplemental nutritional assistance program or the temporary assistance for needy families. These are all funding streams that connect to education, but are not directly from the Department of Education. So, and then when you look at the loan repayment programs that have been offered down through administrations, again, regardless of Republican or Democrat, oh, well, if you make all your student loan payments for X number of years, and usually it's, 5 years or more, and you're never late, then you can qualify for this program where the balance of your student loan is forgiven. And here's the caveat: if you become a federal employee or work in an office where federal employees contract you out. Do you see what's happened there? If you this, if you that, this is what we'll do. But does it benefit you? Does it benefit your child? No. It makes them a part of the cog in the system, the status quo. Now, that program under Obama was not very, very successful. Guess what's being trotted out now? About the same thing. Just a couple of tweaks here and there, so it doesn't sound so democratic, but it's by a Republican president. Does this sound like we have a two-party system that is working separately? No, they're working together. But a lot of the times they're going to say, oh, well, this side did that, and this side did the other thing. If you look at them, if you look at the level of legislation that I do, they are bicameral, bipartisan. What does that mean? It doesn't mean we're over here pointing fingers in the other direction. We're pointing fingers at each other, at you.
Yes, that's interesting. That's a good breakdown. Now when we get to what we say, how we should inform parents.
Right.
There will be a lot of people that come across this video that won't be quite as familiar, although we have done some work. But mostly the work we do is we do have an article called the hidden religion of SEL.
Oh, yes, it absolutely is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we go through that, and
Mm-hmm.
we're dealing with also pulling also from Lisa Logan's article about the
Yes.
federal plan,
Yes,
which is
absolutely.
good
Which is,
stuff. Really
yeah,
good
it's tied
stuff.
in. Yeah, it's tied into the global plan. And the global plan is that the reason why we're seeing such a shift towards support for the sustainable development goals is because when those particular 2030 goals were cooked up
Hmm.
down in South America, we had this lovely professor, and I use that word very loosely, from the University of Tennessee, and she went to the meeting and she came back so inspired that she wrote a sustainable development toolkit. And
Oh,
in the toolkit was all the ways that you could implement this global shift of attitudes, values, and beliefs, but you could do it from an organic local level. Because if we ever tried
yeah.
to accept it from, oh, this is from the United Nations, we would all be going, no, 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 we don't want it. But if we somehow innocently and innocuously put it into local government, if we put it into local communities through arts and parks and libraries, and then put it in our schools, it's not going to be quite so bad because, after all, it looks like it's what the people want. But when you look at the social and emotional profit margin, I think it is by 2027, all the all the curriculum companies that have sprouted up since social and emotional learning became pretty much law of the land. Uh, there have been thousands of them pop up. You've got resources, after school programs, you've got all kinds of stuff geared for the social and emotional manipulation, as I call it.
Yes.
By 2027, I believe the profit margin across the world for this one market in school, and again, this is regardless of preschool to college or adult learning. Um, I want to say, I think it was $3 trillion. Now, I could be wrong. I have it on my blog. I have the actual article that tells you the actual figure. But the point of it is, whether it's 30 billion, 30 million, 30 trillion, it doesn't, or 3 trillion, it doesn't matter. That's an insane amount of money for one agenda. And that is to change your attitudes, your values, and your beliefs from a family-based godly perspective, if that's what you choose, or whatever your family is doing as far as that sort of thing, to a systematic government controlled religion, so to speak. And this ties into not only the United Nations, but into the Noahide laws, because the United Nations has adopted the Noahide laws as the
Mm,
part of the religious aspect that nations should be following. So, what better way than to
interesting.
insert it into education? Because the United Nations recognized in this toolkit as well that this professor from Tennessee wrote up. Education was chosen as the chief change agent, Brad and Summer, because it was where you could reach the largest number of people at one time.
Of course. It makes a lot of sense, right?
So when you have someone like former President Jimmy Carter, who somehow becomes best buds with Rebbe Schneerson, who brought Noahide over from Russia to America, and they meet in 1978, and then, oh, lo and behold, guess what Jimmy Carter does in 1979? He
Mm,
helps get the United States Department of Education
Yeah.
off the ground.
mm,
But
mm-hmm.
why? Because it was a result of that year long cultural agreement between Sneerson and Carter that the Noahide would be the basis of the religious foundation being taught in our schools, not the biblical constitutional foundation that we have and that we had known and we had survived and thrived on for decades, but no, this. Now, if you look at the demise of education since that time frame,
Oh yeah.
and you start to see how God was meticulously pulled out, there's your answer. That cultural agreement has been so strong that every year since it became public law under Bush the first in 1992, Not only is it unconstitutional, the whole ball of wax is, but we've had every president from Bush the first to Trump the second, every anniversary of Schneerson's death, which I think is in late April. What are they doing? A proclamation to continue to uphold this cultural day of education sharing that was originally started by Schneerson and Carter.
Wow, that's thank you for that. That's an excellent breakdown. And for our viewers out there, we do plan to have Lynne back.
We do
At some point soon to get into much more detail on this, on the Noahide laws and and how this all connects, because she's given us a bunch of material that we need to bone up on first, so that we can make sure that we're helpful in the conversation somehow.
Right.
Quickly though, I am just curious that you said that. How does the Abraham Accords fit into all that?
Oh, it backs it up absolutely 155%. In fact, it continues to embed that we are going to shift from U.S. law, as far as from our criminal justice system, into this more chaotic international court system that the Noahide has set up, where it's really going to mean severe punitive damages, either financially or physically. And I want folks to stop and think about, when you think about the loving creator who tasks parents with the chief goal of educating their children. And then we see what the system has come in and done, which is, oh no, parents, you need to be out here making a living and we'll take care of the children. What we've seen happen is that God is very fierce in his judgment. I'm not going to say he won't punish, but what I'm saying is that by and large, if you look at his 10 commandments and you look at the way he said, parents, I'm charging you with the responsibility to educate your children, it was to provide, it was provision, and it was, consequence, because we know if we don't carry out the law, there is a consequence. But 9 times out of 10, that consequence was never punitive damages financially, and it certainly wasn't, punishing to the point of, I'm going to chop off your hand because you did A, B, C, and D. Now, we know that happened in the Old Testament, but we also know that when Christ came, he became that sacrifice so that we didn't have to continue with those barbaric procedures. But with the Abraham Accords, it wants to seek to change not only the education system, but the government system, down from the way it's funded, the way it's politically run, and then how punishments are carried out.
Yeah, heavy stuff.
It is horrible stuff.
Do you see a tie-in with the ICC and the ICJ, the International?
Oh yeah,
Like the
because
world-
those are going to become, that's part of the new Sanhedrin.
Yes.
And if you look
Yes.
at the number of American justices that are on that international court, that international court now operates under United Nations laws. It doesn't operate under United States laws. It operates under United Nations, because it can't be an international court if it's under a certain country. It has to be United Nations. Well, with knowing that the United Nations adopted the Noahide laws, well, there you go. You got to set up that court system. And if you know anything about how the court system runs under the Noahides, it is going to be very anti-Christian. It is going to be very anti-anything that is not Noahide. And that includes the fellow people who, now let's make one note here. Noahide does not mean every single person in the Jewish faith, nor does every Jewish person represent Noahide. The Jewish people that I know very much want to keep their faith. They will be under attack just as much as you and I as Christians. And why? Because the Noahide is a corrupt sect that was founded by corrupt Pharisees and Sadducees who hated Jesus and wanted to destroy the Christians. And it has survived. There's been a remnant that has survived all the way to present day. So
form of rabbinic Judaism, which is really
right.
the only form that has any sway in Israel today.
And it's very, very scary because you'll have a lot of people. I have some Jewish friends who are like, well, you can't talk about that because first of all, you're not in the faith, and that's not what it is. And I'm like, well, when you've spent almost 2 years digging through the research that I have with all the different aspects of it and all the different political systems who have signed up to this and helped create it so that it is so punitive and anti-God. And I even have professing friends of the Jewish faith, not of the Noahide sect, who refuse to use God's name. They won't say God as in G-O-D. They'll say G-D. Well, that's part of the Noahide influence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And who's to say once this international court system that's set up through the new Sanhedrin, it's going to be very arbitrary, because one of the first things is you cannot use the name of the Lord your God in vain. Well, now that sounds almost like the very first 10 commandments. That's because they'll try and snow you that every one of the 7 Noahides comes directly from the 10 commandments that were given to Moses. Nothing could be further from the truth. When you look at the 10 commandments, there is a solid, proven biblical timestamp. When you look at all the different resources out there that claim the Noahide laws were given, they're across the board. None of them agree. And there's been no factual evidence ever, physical evidence ever, to prove when they were written. So according to one resource, it might be back here when the flood happened. If you look at this one, well, it was when Moses got them. If you look at another one, it was, another time point. So when you can't even show physical and documented proof on when these happen, how can you claim that they are part of the God-given 10 commandments? You can't. These are all man-made. And we know that man-made in his heart is not good.
Right.
We are not good-natured people. And this is another fallacy that has been taught by our education system, that, oh, well, we're all good at heart.
Basically good.
No, we are not. We are
Right.
sinful creatures.
Men's hearts are desperately wicked.
And the evidence is plain to see. Is
everywhere around us.
It absolutely is. And then when you look at the further, not only the religious aspect of how we are shaping attitudes, values, and beliefs, but with that comes we're not going to talk about the characteristics of God, because the characteristics of God or Jesus are the basis for our molding of character. What we've seen take their place are these contrived morals and ethics. And I've had Bible people come up to me and go, oh, that's not right. That's not right. We've got morals in the Bible. Yeah. You want to find them? Go look at a concordance. Look up morals. Look up ethics. They're not there. If you look up the fruit of the Spirit, if you look up the characteristics, those are there.
Yeah.
Those are the qualities. Those were what we were supposed to be being taught. That was what was being taught to our children. But when you look at the timeline of the demise of our education system, it wasn't in the 70s when Carter sat down with Sneerson. It was all the way back in the late 1800s when you had a man. His last name was Owen. I'm sorry, I can't remember his first name. But he was a dyed-in-the-wool socialist from another country who came to America. And he landed up in New England somewhere. And he brought with him the socialistic pattern of compulsory education.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And when compulsory education took off, it said, Mom and Dad, you don't need to worry about education for Johnny and Susie. That's what we're for, because after all, we're society, and society can do a heck of a lot better job than you can. And so that took off.
Is that Hugh Owen?
I think his name was Robert Owen.
Okay.
Is in a book that I have that was tracing the history of the National Education Association, which we know is a teachers union. It was tracing the history of that and how that came to
Okay.
be. And so I'm trying to remember. I think it was Sam Blumenthal wrote that book, and he was phenomenal as far as tracing the history in America. Charlotte Iserbyt is who I have the honor of carrying on her work since she passed.
Yeah. Okay.
And one of the things that we both agreed on was that, yes, you can go back to the late 1800s and you can trace it, because it didn't just happen in the 70s. It didn't just happen in the 30s when the Department of Labor, when the push to combine labor and education came about. Because I have an article, that was one of the first articles I wrote back in 2014, Skeletons in Our Closet, I believe it was, but it traced the history of how labor has forevermore tried to attach itself to education, which is why we now have, thanks to that global agenda of workforce readiness that marries Sustainable Development Goal number 4, which is quality education, to Sustainable Development Goal number 8, which is decent work for all. That's how it's united. And back in 2018, Trump and DeVos traveled to Argentina on the taxpayer dollar and met with the global group of 20, or the G20. And within the G20 meetings, people don't understand that there are sub-councils of the group of 20. Now, that's the group of nations, the 20 nations. So you have a B20, which stands for Business 20. You have a Y20, which stands for Youth 20, so on and so forth. And what I exposed about that particular meeting was that without our approval, without we the people getting to vote on this, our self-appointed representatives, or our taxpayer, excuse me, not self-appointed. Well, in a way they were. They took taxpayer money without our knowledge and went on a trip down to Argentina. So classify it however you want to. Point of it is, two government representatives, our president and our secretary of education, decided for us that we needed to create more efforts to unite education to labor so we could have that skilled workforce for a greater global economy, along with the rest of the G20. Now, the difference here is if you look at the article I did on that with the picture showed these ministers of education from every other country of that group of 20 except the United States. We were the only one that had a secretary of education. But because we didn't have a minister of education that oversaw our entire country, that was as close as we could get. So you have two Americans who are supposed to be, really God-fearing and red-blooded Republicans and God and country and all this, and they're uniting you to a global agenda. And what have we seen happen since? We saw, especially under Biden, but Obama had started this. Before him, it was Clinton. We saw both the Bushes prop this up. We saw Reagan sign up for it. And that's why I'm saying it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. You're coming at this, maybe not from the same direction, but you're coming at it from the same goal. And that is to take education, remove every bit of the academics, and insert skills so that you can go create a better global economy. Now, does that sound like you're pursuing life, liberty, or happiness? Does that sound like you are exercising your God-given freedom of choice?
Absolutely not.
It's a good point. So let me. I think there might have been a hiccup at the beginning of the YouTube stream. So let me just make sure that everyone understands who we're talking to here. This is our guest today is Lynne Taylor, also known as the Common Core Diva, and her work and our work is overlapping, and we're both Christians, and we're very proud to tell you that. We've been, warning about this for a while. The evidence is clear. Our education systems are infested with, at best, a soft ideological social theory, and at worst, and in our opinions here, it's subversive, long-embedded system of spiritual formation where the language has been masked. The spiritual language has been masked with academic language and language of the social sciences. And as you can hear, one of our main contentions here is that this education system doesn't see your child as being as a human being made in the image of God, but as a programmable cog, a unit of work in a workforce pipeline. And so let's just see here for a minute. I wanted to bring up also some things that we can give some folks today. So maybe some terminology.
Sure.
And I've also got an educator / expert profile that we wrote on someone who came through our area to do a workshop.
Oh boy.
Yeah, for continuing education credits. I'll scroll down through this a little bit, and this is nothing against this lady. This is her profile, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. So her website is right here if you'd like to see. Her name is Melissa Collins Harrell, and she is well lettered there, so you can see her bona fides there. But listen to these terms here. Well, let's look at that for a second. Licensed clinical mental health counselor. Now, this is a lady who's coming to instruct teachers for their continuing education, for their CEUs, I guess, right? Isn't that right? CEU, continuing education credits or units. And listen to what her background is. Listen, and you'll get the idea of what we're talking about here. The schools are becoming like mental health facilities. Teachers are being trained to be counselors.
Right.
So
that's to get more money.
Oh yeah. So she's a licensed clinical mental health counselor, Master of Education. She does have that, and she concentrated in counseling. Master of Public Health, founder of Resiliency. There's that word.
Oh gosh.
Counseling and Consulting, PLLC. Now, key themes in, let's see, is this Dr. Harrell? She doesn't call herself doctor. So, Ms. Harrell's work, trauma-informed pedagogy. Now, parents, there's a term you need to understand. You'll see this word. You may see it in your children, some of their work. Pedagogy just means a method, practice, and scope of instructing or teaching. You're going to encounter this word often.
Yes, you will.
It just means their theory of teaching. But really, now one of the things we've done too, Lynne, we've made a social emotional learning glossary that gives the term they use with a public-facing definition and what the hidden meaning is.
Good, because I know the last time I saw anyone take on that kind of work, it was, Common Core state standards were probably about 2 years old, and people were getting tired of hearing this double speak. And so this one individual out of Illinois, I think it was, took the time to use all the buzz phrases that we hear, like whole child learning. Oh, that's an awful one because, and I kind of jokingly say when I go on air sometimes, well, I didn't know that we had previously educated half the child. Did you?
Right.
I mean, when I look at my friend over there, I don't see half my friend. I see all my friend. What do you mean whole child? What they mean is that we're not just going to focus anymore on the reading, the writing, the arithmetic. We're not going to focus on the things we should be focusing on. We're going to start going over here into psyche and mindfulness and all this other stuff. So yes, that Johnny and Susie could be well-rounded. Well, let me tell you just a little bit about, and I'm sorry if I'm interrupting, but I really feel
this is your time.
I really feel, given what you've just said about, the background and whatnot, I cannot remember what year it was. It might have been 2016. It might have been 2018. I don't remember. But anyway, there was this documentary that was coming through North Carolina, and it was all about building resilient children. Mm-hmm. And I already knew that resilient was one of those buzzwords for, what they are training them to do, which is to somehow bounce back. Well, now in physics, resiliency works great. On human beings, not so much. But we're going to force the system to create this illusion that it absolutely does through the social and emotional learning. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this particular documentary is I did a live Facebook feed that I think is on the blog archived, and I had people come at me like I had zero love for what hardships a child goes through. I had all kinds of people come at me from all angles about I didn't know what I was talking about, blah, 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 blah. But in the live video feed that I did, I took copious notes. And I don't know if you can see what's behind me, but I've got just some of my shelves with my notebooks. I have notebooks of handwritten notes that span the entire time I've been researching. So when I went to this free documentary that was held at a church, by the way, down in Charlotte, I'm sitting there taking lots of notes. And so when I did the live feed, I'm going through some of those notes. Now, here's what was shocking to me. As I went through the documentary with everybody else that was in the room, there were teachers, but there were also law enforcement people. There were people in office. There were people from the church. And what I didn't realize was that my perspective in that audience was totally opposite of everyone else's in that room. So when I asked my questions, it was like, well, we have someone who's opposed. Ooh, bad, bad, bad. And why? Why is it bad to ask tough questions? Why is it taboo to bring up a different perspective? I even face that still today. If I bring up something that maybe someone else hasn't thought of, it's not about me. It's about the fact that, have you really thought this out like you should? Because you should be asking tough questions. And if you're not, phooey on you. It's on you that you need to do your own homework. So I find out this documentary that was put out by the Centers for Disease Control and Kaiser Permanente, big tech, big pharma, big insurance. Oh, yes. And the whole premise was we need to create more of these adverse childhood experience assessments or surveys, as they called them. Because the entire premise is through the education system, woohoo, and the community, woohoo, we're going to wipe out every negative thing that Johnny and Susie could ever go through. And I'm sitting here going, that is impossible. Not because I'm an expert, but because I'm a mom. And I know what is negative to one child is not necessarily going to be negative to another child. Now, I'm not talking the big ticket items like, child abuse and that kind of stuff. Yes, those things need to be addressed. But this was lumping in everyday people with those offenders that were well needed to be taken care of. So why am I widening the scope of parental purview and what's going on in the home? More control. Because after all, if the system can prove, which it has done, that parents only have this much seat at the table when it's their child, when they should have every seat at the table because it's their child, it's about control. It's about funding. So not only did CDC, Kaiser Permanente, create this particular movement, but you had the North Carolina Council of Churches, the North Carolina State Association for Police Organizations, I'm not sure what their official title is, get on board with this because after all, we have to have the whole village. Does that sound familiar? Oh, we have to have the whole village raise your child. Why? Because collectively, that child is ours. Now, under this adverse childhood experience assessment survey system was the whole goal to align it with Rockefeller's Resilient City movement. And the resilient cities are not just in America, they are spread throughout the world. And the premise is if we start off a child in the most positive aspect that we possibly can, we'll have less crime, we'll have less unemployment, we'll have less social dependency. Oh, nothing could be further from the truth because if you look at the model for these resilient cities, it is everything to do with social dependence on the government. So here's what happened. They take you through this, and the survey sounds very innocent. And when I say innocent, please remember this is tongue in cheek, okay?
Yeah.
Your mom and dad take you to church more than you want to go. When in the heck is that the school's business?
Yeah, I know. What in the
Okay,
world?
so that's one of the questions. Does anyone touch you in a way you don't like? Now, not inappropriately, but in a way you don't like.
Oh,
Well,
yeah. Wow.
depending on if you're in a bad mood, or maybe you have a child who is extrasensory sensitive as far as touch.
Mhm.
The way the questions are worded is where you need to be looking. It's not the concept, because the concept alludes to the fact we're trying to find out those people who abuse their children. No, they're trying to find out any foothold they can get to reprogram that child. So anyway, the point of it was that those were two of the questions. And of course, the obvious: does anybody smoke cigarettes? Does anybody drink? How much do they drink? What kind of TV shows? Things that are none of the school's business. But when you have school assigned devices come in and spy on these families, what better thing to do than to back it up with this survey? So Johnny and Susie are sent home with this survey. They, with the parent or without the parent, fill this stupid thing out. They take it back to school. Now, this is all in the documentary. And the way that it was spun was, well, this research is going to help us so that we can identify that Susie here has a behavioral issue that we must address, because she had to walk from school and she stepped out in the road and she almost got hit by a bus. And so by the time she got to school, she was a frazzled mess. And it's our job to make sure that she's okay, that she can have a good rest of the day. And I'm sitting here going, okay, well, depending on Susie's age, mom and dad should have walked her to school. So they would have been there. They would have helped her not walk in front of the bus. They could have helped her get herself calm back down, or whatever they needed to do to take care of their own child, because they know their child better than anyone save God. None of that was factored in. Parents were never factored into this, but somehow the school was going to take this all over. Now, that was in the documentary, and it was painting this picture that this child would have this kind of nurture all through its career, so that by the time it got to be an adult, it was well adjusted. Here's the problem with this kind of programming. When you teach a child that there's only one side of your emotions, be it positive, be it negative, and you totally disregard and try to dampen down and snuff out the other one, be it positive or negative, what are you doing to that child's psyche? What are you doing to their mind? The reason why God gave us positive and negative emotions was to help take care of us. Because if we didn't have some of those positive and negative emotions kick in, we would be in a world of trouble, would we not?
Guilt and shame. I'll just say guilt and shame. Those two things today is what you're talking about here. Those two things are they're talked about like they just come from the evil world. But guilt and shame are the guardrails, right?
Well, it's not only that, but it's not just guilt and shame, but it was teaching that anger.
Oh, yeah.
Now, okay, all right. Now we all know that, yeah, Jesus even got angry. But what did he do with that anger? Did he take it out on people? He said something to people, but what did he actually hit? He hit the tables.
Yeah.
Now, and a lot of people will hear that. They go, oh, well, that's striking out. But that's what we're told, is that anger, when it's misdirected, is bad. But when anger is under the godly purview, it can be very beneficial. You have to remember the positive and the negative. That's why we have two sides to us. We're not always happy, but we're not always sad. But why do we have happy and sad? So that we can recognize the juxtaposition, but we can also recognize when we need help. But if you're so teaching the child that there's only one side of you, here are two things that will happen. And you can look at current events and past history and prove this one out and tell me I'm wrong, because I know I'm not because I'm perfect, but because I've done my research.
Right.
Two things happen. One, that child either implodes to the point of suicide. Anything from suicide backward, like hurting themselves physically or emotionally, or verbally lashing out, or any of those sorts of things, or calling, looking at themselves and saying you're dumb, you're stupid, all those things. That's self-harm in a way. Suicide's the ultimate self-harm. That child will either implode or they will explode, where they harm others. And if you think I'm smoking dope, I want you to look at how the system has played up the number of violent episodes that have happened. What has happened? There's a child at the crux of it who has been somehow so misguided in belief that this is what they're doing. Now, let's fast forward this back to the resilient cities. Portland, Oregon is one of the best examples. They went in with this lock, stock, and barrel. And I have friends who told me about this. I've had people connect with me from all over the nation going, wow, you don't even live here and you're calling this stuff out. I have people who help me out with that sometimes, but I also read legislation. The point of it is, my people from Oregon said, yeah, Portland was one of the biggest examples of this. We're a resilient city. We went through this ACE garbage. We went through this social and emotional stuff. We have an overrun system in our mental health capacity because we have people who have been so stunted in their maturity as far as good versus evil, positive and negative, and those sorts of things. We have one of the largest unemployment rates in the state. We have immense poverty. But remember, the resilient city was supposed to be the be all end all and not have any of that happen. But this is all connected. Now, these poor children in Connecticut have probably graduated by now, but back when this documentary was coming out, there was a school system, and I did a radio show up at Connecticut, is how I know it, that they had just trotted out when the children were in kindergarten. And I cannot remember the name of the program, but it was all about mind manipulation. They had a nice, pretty name for it, so it didn't sound like it. Because if it sounded like it, the parents would have said, not on my watch. But anyway, point of it is, they started when these children were in kindergarten. It was a 10-year program, guys. Not tested on anyone, not vetted by people who really understand how a child's development works, especially in their brains. And the state decided, sounds like a plan, so they unleashed it on this one school. They went from kindergarten to 9th grade, steeped in this system. I'm sad to report I have not followed up on how these children turned out, but I can just imagine, after what we have seen happen in other states with similar programs, that it's not good. And this is what, in the name of supposed education, that we're seeing our system do to our children. And we've got parents who are absolutely oblivious to this is what's going on.
Hopefully we can remedy that a little bit. And what you were just talking about there again, as we started off with Proverbs 22:6, which is repeated in the New Testament as well. Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he's old, he will not depart from it. Or a student will be like his teacher.
Right.
And that's a very important principle to remember. And so what you've pointed out there is a population that can't care for itself,
right,
and the mental health problems, or just we could just say that sin is just rampaging. And this is because this is the result of the discipleship of the state onto the people.
Right. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up, you were talking about the wordplay, and I'm so glad you guys put together that glossary.
Yeah.
one of the things that we are guaranteed is freedom of speech. That's in the middle of the First Amendment. If you look at the First Amendment, it's not incredibly long. But one of the things that I just learned, this was from a book written by A.J. Jacobs, The Year of Living Constitutionally. He breaks down, hey, I took a year and I am going to enact like I'm living under the Constitution as if it were back in the day. And his book is kind of fun in a way because it shows how people have so misunderstood what our Constitution is, but it also brings up a point that there were actually several different parts to that freedom of speech. So when you have schools that are attacking your right to say what you want, or let's go back, to the Noahide thing about taking the name of the Lord in vain. Well, who's to decide what name that is? That's a violation of freedom of speech. Okay, people want to say, oh, well, I know that, and I know what's going on in schools. And well, somebody said this and it offended me and they're a bully. And then you have to go through bully management, which is part of the social emotional. I mean, it's this hamster wheel of garbage. Anyway, here are the different parts of freedom of speech. Number one,
right.
Religion. State-run religion. Not any religion, state-run, state-sanctioned. So when the one world religion comes in, there you go. That's a violation. Okay. No established religion by the country. So that gives you the freedom. If you want to be Christian, fine. If you don't, whatever faith it is, under the Constitution, you are guaranteed that part of the freedom of speech. All right. Also, what you say. Now, we do have some states that are becoming more and more policing about what kind of speech is considered free and what is offensive. We should be working together at local levels to find out more about that.
Absolutely.
The press has every freedom to be able to say objectively, but what have we seen happen to our press? They've become subjugated so that they're putting out not objective, but subjective material. Look at who owns the press, the same people. So what is going to happen? That message is going to become distorted. Peaceful assembly. So if you don't like what's going on at the local school board, you do have a right for peaceful assembly. And petition of government is the last one. The reason why they were put in this order, and you don't have to read Jacob's book to find this out, was because these were the best keys to progress that our forefathers were giving us as an infant nation. They are still the keys to progress that we have as an old fart nation. We're almost 250 years old, but you have to stop and look. When did we really stop being a nation and become an incorporation? Because that makes a difference.
There's a big one.
That makes a difference. Are you still the nation? Would you know it if you were? When did we become incorporated as a business? Because let's face it, government is not a people. Government is a system. A system that is by and large run as a business for profit.
That's not their democracy, as they like to say.
Yeah. So you have to understand, first of all, where's the nation? Are we still a nation or are we incorporated? Now, depending on what part of the Christian camp you fall in or the non-Christian camp that you fall in, if you follow American politics, would you know that we became incorporated in the late 1800s, about the time this idea of compulsory education came about? Would you know that? Would you know who set it up? Because if you don't, you really need to start looking. We want to think that we are still a free nation, and I would love to think that. But sadly, we live in one of the largest open-air prisons known to mankind because the way that our federal government has usurped the people's power, because it's government for the people, by the people, and of the people. It is not government by a system for the system to benefit a greater global good.
Excellent points. And the way we combat that is we stop paying attention to the circus and the shiny objects that are on television every day, and we pay attention to the things that are happening in our own hometowns, you know?
Right.
And I think what you mentioned there, I kind of wanted to, we talked about this before we got started. I thought we may talk about this on the way out here as we're trying to help parents and anyone, even if you're not a parent, you know someone who is, you know some children. We all need to be. We need to know this.
Yeah,
So,
but let me say one more thing,
Go
Brad.
ahead.
I'm so sorry, but if I
Please.
don't get this out, I'm going to forget it. The First Amendment and the freedom of speech and all the parts that come with it were the keys to progress. The key to control, though, and this is where our government has actually succeeded, especially in our education system, is that they have attacked that freedom. They have legislated that freedom. They have de facto ruled it. That's the key to control.
Absolutely.
So I'm so sorry, but if I didn't get it out, I forget it.
That's exactly
No,
what we
that's
need to
good.
hear.
Okay.
Now, I want to I'll make my case for you as to why I believe that social emotional learning and in general the education system, and I don't just limit it to public.
Right. Oh
Because-
no, it's permeated every education aspect, even homeschooling.
The problem with school choice right now. I think maybe you should probably talk about that for just a
Yeah,
second.
give us a brief definition of school
that's more
choice
important than what I have.
for the people out there, because that's
gosh.
been in the headlines with Trump,
If
and
you-
he's been supporting it with the National Day of
Okay.
Prayer and all this other kind of stuff. So
Yeah. Okay. School choice was a scheme. Now I know in other countries scheme means tax plan, but in America I'm using it as a dastardly plan, which is what it means, a scheme to undermine. It has been in the works since the late 70s by neoconservatives and neoliberalists. It got support from the U.S. Department of Education, as well as there was a education corporation that ceased to exist probably about the time that Bush the first got into office, but it's one of the groups that helped him get into office. And it was at that point, it was using vouchers or taxpayer funds to give to anybody and, subsidize education. So we need to understand that the school choice funds are taxpayer dollars. Now, people are going to sit here and trust me, I've heard every argument on this one, but I just done the research. Also looked at Charlotte's research on it because she had done tremendous amount of work, and how the Republicans and the Democrats were I'm sorry, screwing us 6 ways to Sunday on this. There's no other way I can put it. I'm so sorry. But anyhow, this has been a setup since the get-go for more government control. But the ultimate goal is to erode your right to vote, to go after, to legislate how you vote. And people are going, how's that supposed to work? We're talking Johnny and Susie's education. What do you mean it's going to take my right to vote? Here's how. Taxation without representation was guaranteed in our Constitution, was it not? Yes, it was. When you take taxpayer funds, I'm going to take my money out of my purse and I'm going to hand it to you. Is it still my money? No, it became your money the minute I handed it to you, didn't it? Well, sure it did. Okay, so here's the premise. I'm taking that money out of my wallet and I'm sending it to Raleigh or wherever your state capital is, because that's what I'm supposed to do with my tax return. That money does not sit in Raleigh for the state to use. Some of it does, but the vast majority goes up to D.C. Now, the minute it crosses the state line and it goes to D.C., it ceases to become state funded. It now becomes federal funding. So when the feds come in and they say, oh, yes, we're going to use tax dollars and we're going to create school choice opportunity funds and scholarships and education savings accounts and, Coverdale accounts or 529 accounts or all the different names they could possibly put on it to confuse you. We're going to redistribute the wealth. And when you redistribute the wealth, you might as well be a socialist, right? Because that's what you just did. And people don't get it. And what happens in a socialist system? when it comes to voting. You can say, I'm going to go vote for vodka, or I'm going to go vote for borscht, but what are you really going to get? Are you going to get the food product of your choice? You're going to get what the government decides. Now, another reason that we can attack this is, or another way we can attack this as far as going after your right to vote, is that the taxation that you give to the government is supposed to be used in ways that you sanction. You haven't sanctioned that by a vote. For the federal government to come in and say, we're going to do A, B, C, and D, it should have been put on every state ballot and it should have been passed to be ratified. None of this was. It absolutely was not. Now, we have states who have said on a state level, yes, we're going to do this, but I'm talking federal level because there's a big difference. Remember, this goes back to what is the federal jurisdiction and what is not. Education is never the federal government's jurisdiction. So how dare they sit there and say, we're going to use federal tax dollars so you, mom and dad, could go have the education of your choice. But here's a kicker to this. So it's not only taxation without representation, it's redistributed wealth, but it also is impossible because you have a mandate for national education in the Every Student Succeeds Act, which we are still under de facto Rule 4. And that mandate, and I quote, all education must be laid out to the same post-secondary readiness workforce standards as laid out in the Workforce Readiness and Opportunity Act.
There you go.
Did you just hear a choice?
No.
All education, what must be, what aligned? Does that give me choice? No. So the illusion that you have choice to pick out where that money goes, and Arizona is a great test dummy state for this because they trotted out debit cards full of funding for mom and dad to go supplement Johnny and Susie's education any way they saw fit.
Even homeschooling, right? They'll say you can be a homeschooler.
Now, here's what they didn't tell the people. Oh yeah, we put this pre-approved curriculum list up on our website. Oh, you didn't see it? Tisk tisk, you got to pay the money back with interest. Does that sound like choice? Does that sound like freedom? No.
That sounds like the Respect for Marriage Act. You know what I mean? The Disrespect for Marriage Act.
Redefine it out of existence.
It's absolutely off the charts to me how people cannot see the writing on the wall when it comes to school choice. Now, I had a wonderful lady out of Texas make this image for me, and I'm going to try to illustrate it. And if you're listening and you have a good imagination, great. If you listen and you can draw well, good for you. Try this out. Okay. So I want you to draw an umbrella. Okay. And I'm using my hand as an umbrella. And at the base of it is the family. So that would be where the little crook is, okay, where you hold your hand. That's where the family is, okay? And then coming across the umbrella, like rain, are federal funds or state funds, because this happens at a state level as well. The corruption is not just at federal, it's at state as well, because those states are beholden to the federal government to comply with that mandate about all education. So you have the money raining over, okay? And it's coming to the family there at the handle. But what you see on the different parts of the umbrella is you see homeschool, you see faith-based schools or parochial schools, you'll see higher education, you'll see community college, you'll see public K through 12 education, you'll see charters, you'll see magnets, you'll see pod schools, micro schools, any of those types of education choices. No, what Every Student Succeed Act did was it wiped out true educational choice, because before then you didn't have the different education choices that you have go, oh, I can't use the assessment I want to use. I got to use this state prescribed test. Why? To data track. Why? For funding. Why? Because you need a workforce.
Yeah, I mean, so when you talk about that umbrella, what that makes me think of is just different target audiences also. Like, they create the illusion that you've got all these different options for
Yeah.
your family, for the personality that your household might have, but really it's like they're just branding, they're just getting the marketing in with different messaging.
Exactly.
You know what I
So,
mean?
yeah, it is absolutely off the chart stupid to me. Yes, I'm sorry. Um, Public-private partnerships, especially through our charter schools, are a demise also in a representative form of government. Because when you have public-private partnerships, you don't need representation because
Right.
that
Exactly.
public-private partnership becomes your um, guiding force, I'm going to say.
Yeah, the big thing about the public-private partnerships is that you have businesses who are able to make investments into governments without any risk because the taxpayers will assume the risk. And then, for instance, what do you think about this? In our area, you probably have them in your area too. We've got greenways now.
Oh, yeah.
And the greenways they're nice. I like to walk on the greenways, but you know what that is, right? That is where public-private partnership, a business has come in. Hey, let's build this greenway for you, and okay, they did that, and that land will never again be private.
Never be private, and also they've got all kinds of data collection along it, and at some
Oh,
point you
right.
won't be allowed to be on those things unless you're
Yeah,
approved.
they can keep you
Yeah,
off.
exactly. Well, you've
Yeah.
got the insertion of public-private partnerships not only at a federal level in education, but at a local level. I mean, okay, I understand we have some really great mom and pop businesses who want to help the children. I don't begrudge them, but if they knew what they were really supporting, would they do it? I don't know, but you've got public-private partnerships that are fascist. I mean, that's a basic form of fascism. But what the heck? Why should we care? We're already using a socialistic form of educating. Why not throw in fascism?
Well, it really is.
We have become so polluted in this educratic system that we are honoring every ism out there except Americanism.
That's right. Yeah, and we discovered too with, like, for example, the pandemic, phenomenon, if you will, from 2020, that there was an incentive of for people that would invest in pandemic products and such, a 35-to-1 on return on investment. So
yeah.
that's
So it's
just
an
one
investment.
example
Yeah.
of how they bribe. So they'll just figure
Oh,
out
yeah.
a way to bribe, like they'll impoverish. So
Right.
problem, reaction, solution. These
Oh,
businesses that are
yeah.
hanging on for dear life, and then you can get all this money, and keep going with your business. But by the way, you better adhere to X, Y, and Z if you want to keep going.
Exactly, exactly. And the dastardly thing about the USMCA, now people need to understand it's not a law. The USMCA is an agreement. That's why it says the United States, Mexico, Canada agreement. What became the law was the mechanism to enforce everything that was laid out in that agreement. And it's on my blog somewhere, but it was uncovering how education was going to be yet again attacked, more legislated, more de facto ruled under that than ever before. Now, if you look at the hype, it will tell you, oh, yes, it was going to create more jobs, more jobs, more jobs. And if you look at the fine print, you will see that depending on what region you are in, X number of jobs across the board. No kidding.
Well, it's got to be equitable.
Oh, yes, and don't get me started. As far as the wordplay, equity and equality.
Yep.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
a great one for education because I know people. Let's see, I'm not a spring chicken, but I'm not an old geezer either. But my point is I remember back in the day when I would hear people who ran the school, were in the school board, they knew the difference between equity and equality. And they knew they were not interchangeable words. But we have generations out there now who are going, oh, I need one, but I'm going to use the other because they both mean the same thing. No, they don't. When you hear an educrat or a bureaucrat or someone who thinks they know how to govern use the word equity when it comes to people or education, they aren't lying to you. They're telling you the truth because it's more about the money. See, equity is a financial term.
Yes, there you
It's
go.
a banking term. So they're telling you, oh, honey, I don't care about you. The money attached to you, yes, I do. So they're showing you their hand, but are you buying it? No, because what the rest of their speech is going along to, equity in education counts, meaning equality should be there. So if you want to use the word equality, that's about people. So why are they not using the word equality? Because it's old fashioned, it's outdated, it doesn't mean what it used to mean.
Like that old Constitution, they say.
I'm sorry, I'm making faces, but oh well. Just,
Well,
ugh.
we're at an hour and 20, and I
Oh,
knew
we
that would
are.
happen.
Okay.
So
Well,
I don't want to keep you much longer. We'll come back sometime. One thing I was going to say to kind of
sure.
support what you were saying there was this. I've read this book by it's Joe Kinchelo's book. It's his Critical Constructivism Primer, and
Hmm.
this would be one of the texts that would be, that you'd be reading if you were being trained to be a teacher today.
Oh
And
boy.
what we were talking about just now, you mentioned the whole child approach. This really is, check this out, what Joe Kinchelow says here in his book. I call him one of the prophets of progressive pedagogy. All right, so one of the things he says here in this book, page, I don't know the page, but it's footnoted here. It's the educational purpose cannot be separated from social justice, human liberation, deeper forms of human interconnection, and the fight for freedom. So that's about everything. Then he
Oh
says,
goodness.
not a mere theory of education, right? This goes beyond pedagogy. He's calling for a unified theory of Weltanschauung, just a
Oh
fancy
yeah.
German word for worldview,
Mm.
ideology, that creates meaning on the nature of human existence. Now, if that's not religion, if that's not foundational worldview, I don't know what is. Right here, look at this.
Wow.
Critical theory is concerned with extending a human's consciousness of himself or herself as a social being in light of the way, of course, dominant power operates to manage knowledge. Teaching and research are never neutral. Now, this is something I absolutely agree with because I don't believe there is. I believe neutrality is a myth.
Yeah.
Especially on moral issues. And we're talking about a worldview here. He says
Yeah.
the ideological nature of teaching and knowledge production implies that teachers, by necessity, must take a position and make it explicit. So, he says critical pedagogy is a philosophical orientation attempting to reconceptualize the process of thinking and knowing. So, it's, I like this piece too. You'll like this. Learning to be an emancipatory teacher and assuming the role of yes.
So, in other words, undoing reality.
Look at this line.
Amazing.
Assuming the role of a producer of dangerous world-changing knowledge. So you know how this works. How I'm sure you know how constructivism or critical constructivism works. Typically, in the educational environment, you have someone who has the wisdom, and the children or the learners come there and they receive a deposit of knowledge from the one with wisdom, biblical model, right? What this is we all come together and everyone's experience is relevant and we
Yep.
produce knowledge together, which could be anything. It could be true. It could be false. It doesn't matter. It's new. It's
Yeah.
progressive. So this is one of the reasons why we always also point out that the kids are so confused, and as you pointed out, adults are so confused. And in this particular article here, we made a little
Well, it's
case for why it's a religion. Go ahead.
it's interesting that you bring that up because it brings me back to the fact of how we have seen critical thinking just trashed. True critical thinking shouldn't happen before teenage, and the reason why is because the way that our brains were wired by our creator You have to be at a certain level to understand how to question, how to reason, how to think. And when we put it at a state of kindergarten or first grade, and we're posing critical thinking questions, take your pick, any of the ideology that's out there, take your pick, because those will be one of them. And it confuses them and it frustrates them. And Lord Almighty, if you start going down the road of sexuality, okay, first of all, again, not age appropriate, because I'm going to tell you what, you have up to a certain age, they have no clue. They don't need to have a clue.
No.
But when you have states that are arguing over, okay, I'm not going to have this at third grade, but at fourth grade, I'm going to insert it.
Yeah,
They're
they're just trying to traumatize kids so that they'll dissociate from reality.
Yeah. What is the magic line between my child being 7 and 8? And okay, at 7 it's too much, but 8, oh yes, it's okay.
Yeah.
No. It is not appropriate even in fourth grade, but that's what we saw the state of North Carolina do. And I'm sitting here going, why? Because the the General Assembly is so addicted to the federal funding. And I don't know if you guys were here in 2013, but I do know that my youngest and I went to Raleigh. We traveled the 3 hours from Charlotte to Raleigh because somebody got the bright idea that our homeschooling law in North Carolina wasn't solid enough. Didn't give 100% freedom to the people who chose to homeschool. Now, the reason why I'm being facetious about this is because I met some of the people who were the pioneers who risked going to jail to create the law that had stood on the books at that point for 25 years and had served the state excellently. There was 100% freedom in what you could do. Then somebody decides, oh, well, we can't go to prom. We can't have a sports team. We can't this, we can't that.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting, now I didn't grow up in North Carolina. I moved here back in 1999. So just before the world was supposed to come to an end. You know? We moved from Florida to here, go figure. Anyway, point of it is, I had met enough people who had told me, here's this group that has formulated a prom. Here's this group who has worked hard to create a homeschool state-specific sports league. Here's this, here's that, here's the other. We had everything. But the reason why the law needed to be updated was because there needed to be a blurred line between what was homeschooling and what was public schooling. Why? Because Race to the Top funding had been visited upon North Carolina under Bev Purdue's purview, $440 million worth. And all she had to do was sign up for the funding so that more children could become educated under Common Core, because that was the code name for the Race to the Top. Because North Carolina's application for Race to the Top funds, just like in a lot of the other states, and I dare you to go back and look at the subtitle for your Race to the Top application, were the words college career readiness, Common Core, career tech education. Any of those would have been there because that was the curriculum that was coming with it. So to be able to reach more children with that kind of curriculum, you had to take the funds. To take the funds, you had to blur the line. And one of our state legislators, who's now retired, he became one of my heroes. His name is Michael Speciale. He lives down east over near New Bern, near the coast. He got up, and after the testimony of why we needed to change the law, and then those of us who were opposed to changing the law got up and spoke, explaining you couldn't improve on 100% freedom when you already had 100% freedom, unless it was under Common Core math.
Yes.
He got up and he said, we've sold our children's souls for $440 million. And he was spot on, because since then, North Carolina's education, whether it is homeschooled or whether it's private school, parochial school, magnet school, charter school, dual enrollment, public school, public charter, micro school, pod school, whatever you want to call it, it has seen a demise. Now, I know a lot of homeschoolers are going to listen to this and you just don't know what you're talking about. Yes, I do, because guess what? I camped out in that camp for 23 years. I know what I saw. I know what I warned against, and people didn't want to hear it because it was, we're immune. It's not going to come to us. But guess what? Did they flock to the free money when it came to dual enrollment? Absolutely. And dual enrollment, especially under the North Carolina system, ties right into the Department of Labor at a state level. And you have a business council that deems what is worthy to go into that type of education, not the State Department of Public Instruction. Oh, they're in on it too, but they also get the business council to come and weigh in. There's your public-private partnership at work.
Wow. That's so interesting. So let me see if I can land this plane.
Sure.
So one of the most overlooked threats, ladies and gentlemen, to American liberty and childhood development, right? It's the state's rebranding of psychological and ideological manipulation as therapeutic education. Now, Lynne argues in her articles and in her speaking, for decades, federal education policy backed by globalist partners, public-private enterprises, and elite philanthropic networks has sugar-coated its true intentions, as we were saying, masking the language. So I wanted to make this SEL glossary to give to people. Just like in one of Lynne's articles, just like Mary Poppins offering a spoonful of sugar. Federal initiatives like the Every Student Succeeds Act, social emotional learning, present themselves as benevolent, but beneath the sweet rhetoric, there's a bitter pill. Government-run systems diagnosing, medicating, reprogramming children according to secular therapeutic ideologies, not parental or biblical standards. And Lynne traces this progression, for example, from the mental hygiene movement of the 50s, when experts warned of communist infiltration and prescribed healthy personalities as a civic defense through outcome-based education, now into competency-based education where the child's soul is surveilled and shaped through social emotional learning or values clarification, digital diagnostics. And as she reports, the numbers are staggering. Over 1 million children under age 6 are on psychiatric drugs. And this might have even been a couple years ago, right? This particular
it
article.
was. And so the number is probably way more now. Yeah.
Well, federal mandates embed mental health profiling. We showed you a little profile of one of the educators, one of the trainers earlier. They embed mental health profiling in every aspect of public schooling, turning schools into clinics and teachers into behavioral engineers. So this is not education. This is spiritual and psychological colonization. So, Lynne, just to take us out of here, if you could help our audience understand just one central truth, what's the ultimate goal behind rebranding education as emotional and mental health management, and why must parents see this not as educational reform, but as a spiritual and a constitutional crisis?
Okay, thank you. I think the biggest thing I could say to that would be it is the absolute antithesis to why we were created. We were created in God's image. We have specific gifts and talents. We have specific missions that each of us are supposed to carry out. And when you take that sort of powerful being and you reduce it down to a nanny state fed, clothed, and educated minion, you totally devoid that child of their God-given right to life. That's a strong word, that's a strong concept, but it should be, because if we're going to protect the sanctity of right to life at one end of the spectrum, we need to protect it at every other end of the spectrum. Your child is fearfully and wonderfully made, just like you are. Just like everyone on this planet, Christian or not, they are fearfully and wonderfully made. It is our job to inform, to help not only protect our family, which is our God-given right and responsibility. And if we're doing anything less, we are not carrying out that responsibility. And shame on us.
The founders understood this. Madison wrote in his memorial and remonstrance, he said, religion must be left to the conviction and conscience of every man. And this is not just a Christian concern, it's a liberty concern.
Yes.
And here's a big, important point for folks. I think if you love liberty, if you love what America traditionally stood for, true Christians have always been liberty's best friend. Only biblical Christianity gives a coherent basis for liberty of conscience and a principal limit on state power. So if we retreat from religion, because that's what they're doing, so if we retreat from that, that's not strategic. It's a concession of ground that liberty itself can't afford to lose. And I think, Summer, do you have anything you want to follow up with before we
No,
let
I think
Lynne
that's
go?
a huge download for people.
It is
and I
a
think
great
it's
job.
really exciting because it definitely complements the work that we've been doing. And you're just you've been so heavily involved in all of this for years and years, whereas Brad and I are more new to the information. What has it been, 6 months, something like that, since we got into SEL and STEM and all,
last summer, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been-
well, okay.
yeah.
I know the time is so hard to. I feel like it's been more recent. So anyway, it's
Yeah.
just a real honor and a pleasure to have you with us and to be affirming what we thought we were detecting. You know what I mean? It's very
Yeah.
reaffirming. Okay, yeah, there's somebody else that also sees it like we do, and this is wrong, and so we're really excited about doing more shows with you, because
Oh,
there's
yeah.
just
Thank you.
so much. This is such a huge behemoth, and
It is. Yes, it
work
absolutely is.
your work with the Noah Hyde laws too is really we're gonna now switch gears and get into that information that you
Okay.
sent over to us.
Okay,
And
thank you.
that would be a great show to do with you next time too.
Oh, yeah. Well, we could do a whole series on that, my dear.
I think we're going to be seeing a lot of each other coming
Yeah.
up. So
Oh, my goodness gracious. Yeah. And, it's absolutely amazing how God puts people in your path, because I'm going to tell you, I've been doing this for so long. And when you have folks like you and Lisa and some of the others who are newer into it,
Yeah.
it is reassuring, because I
Yeah.
know that Charlotte, okay, she was in her 90s, I'm in my 60s, so there was 30 years between us. And when she found me, she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't think anybody else was out there. Oh, I'm so glad
Yeah.
I found you.
Exactly.
But the point of it is, that is part of God's faithfulness. There's always going to be somebody who can pick up the torch and keep going. So,
Yeah.
in this day and age, we need more of those people, because let's face it, yeah, I can top the horns off a billy goat about any of this stuff, but at some point, I'm not going to be able to. And I'm okay with that, because that means my job is done. That was the mission I was given. And, I am very serious when it comes to honoring the mission that we've
Absolutely.
given, because not all of us can be the hands. Not all of us can be the feet. Not all of
That's
us
right.
can be the belly button. Not all of us can be the head. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't care where I fit into all this. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me where I fit. To know that I'm being used is enough.
Yeah.
And that's what I want parents to get, is that you don't have to know exactly where you fit in. Just know you're doing your parental duty.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that is your ministry when you're a parent.
Absolutely. That is your first mission field. Oh,
By the
please.
way, we have to meet
Who's the kitty?
We have to meet
Oh, I'm sorry.
the kitty. We have to meet the kitty.
Come here.
There's
Come
no
here,
way
sweetheart.
around it.
Come here,
You're gonna have to.
sweetheart.
There we go.
There's my Ginger.
That's what we're talking about.
Ginger wants to be on the show.
Yeah.
She does. She does. She is my old lady.
Aw.
She is. She's 14.
She's beautiful.
Thank you. She is
Very
14. We very briefly, I will tell you the saga of how we got Ginger.
All right.
My mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2015, and Mom lived in Podunkie, South Georgia, where I grew up. Got my accent. But she was the crazy cat lady, and we didn't realize when we said crazy that it was actually Alzheimer's. But anyway, I digress. She had 4 cats, and she wasn't taking really good care of them. And so when the decision was made, it was like, okay, Mom has to move in with us here in North Carolina, and you can only bring 1 cat. Well, that meant 3 stayed there. So my middle daughter goes, things just aren't working for me in North Carolina. I think I want to go, and I'll take care of the home place, and I'll keep after the kitties, and that kind of stuff. And so she left, moved down there. We moved my mom in. Mom stayed with us for the entire 2 years that she still had left.
Okay.
And it was a journey into hell, I will tell you. The 1 cat she brought with her actually had been my dad's cat, and kind of put up with Mom, but kind of not. Anyway, I ended up taking care of that cat till it passed. And then I had my own cats that were here. Ginger came to us with the other 2 when things happened to where we needed to leave the old farm, the old home place. Things just weren't safe. And so, packed up the daughter, all her toys, packed up the cats, came here. And Ginger, is our last one standing.
Aw.
Yeah. So to have her is, the last connection I have to my mom when my mom was actually okay. And so I've lost all my cats. They have all gone to wherever kitties go. And so, like I say, she is my last one. If she had been in
How
here,
old is Ginger?
she's 14.
14.
Yeah, the vet even
Wow.
said she doesn't look like it. But
I know she doesn't look old.
she's been around, but it's just been kind of weird because when she goes, like I said, that'll be the last tie to Mom when she was actually well.
We're really
that's
happy to
okay.
meet Ginger. That was awesome. That's a great way to bring it to a close. My sister and Summer's sister-in-law also named Ginger. So I mean, the connections are just all
Well,
over.
you can't look at her and say, how could you not come up with that name? But she had been actually asleep at my feet for most of this interview. And when I heard her, I was like, I don't think anybody could hear. So when you said,
Yeah, we
I was
heard
like,
her. That's why
oops.
we knew. We were like, who's the cat? Who's
We're
the
happy
cat?
to have the cats make an
All
appearance.
right, guys. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
this.
you.
And I really, really want to hear what the audience thinks, And trust me, when I say I really want to hear people go, oh, well, you just want to hear the good stuff. No, sometimes hearing the not so good stuff helps you grow.
That's right.
And it's
Yeah.
iron that sharpens iron. And if anybody feels like they would like to financially bless any of the work that I do, because I am donations only.
Is that through your website?
That is through the website.
CommonCoreDiva.com?
Yeah, there's a donate tab. If you click on it, you can see I have the PayPal option. Now, if people, and I've had people ask me, well, I don't trust PayPal. What I'm going to urge them to do is to get in touch with you, and then I can privately share with you how they can, if they choose to do non-electronic. Okay. How's that?
That sounds good.
Are you
Yeah,
are you a nonprofit at all or no?
Honey, I'm the self-employed. I am the chief
Okay.
bottle washer, cook,
All right.
Yeah.
kitty keeper, laundry
All right.
keeper, researcher.
Amen. Okay.
All of it in one. So anything
Okay.
that God gives is fine.
Sure. Okay.
All right. Anybody that was thinking about donating over to us today, just take it over there and let's support Lynne at Common
let's
Core Diva
support Lynne.
today, because this is great work, and we're really,
amazing
really
work.
grateful to meet you.
So
and praise the
encouraged.
Lord for the work
Yeah,
you're
praise
doing
the
and
Lord.
for meeting you. And we look forward to talking to you again.
Oh, I cannot
Very
wait.
soon.
This is going to be so much fun, you guys.
It
Oh my
will.
goodness, it will
I
be.
think-
So thank you so much for this
Definitely.
opportunity.
I think what we'll
Yeah.
probably do with this one, I think we might take this piece and also put it up on Substack, because we seem to
Okay.
be getting a little more traction over there right now.
Yeah, so that'll
Okay.
be because we have like
Okay.
2 different audiences.
Yeah.
So
Oh
Put it
wow,
there,
that's
too.
even better.
yeah,
Whoa.
yeah. Our
Very
audience
good.
over on Substack seems to be pretty vastly different from the one over here. There's
Yeah.
maybe like
Okay.
5 people over. Anyway, so yeah, it'll be a whole nother audience for you.
Don't you know God never counts the number, it's the
quality.
Yes, the quality. And I learned
It's
this
true.
in one of the early speeches that I gave. I learned this because I was so disappointed not very many people came up, and my mentor goes, honey, don't you know you need to have quality content, which you do. It doesn't matter that there's 2 people or 100 people or 100,000 people. As long as you keep up that quality content, you're good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's so true. I think you're
All
talking
right.
to us too. Thank you for
I know.
that.
All right, guys, if we don't cut off now, we're going to
I know we're just
I
going to
know.
keep going. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks, guys,
God
so
bless
much.
you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
You too.
Bye-bye. Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Hey, we're